It might come as a shock to you to learn that my most favorite human in all the galaxy is one I've never actually had sex with. Now, I hear you doubters out there. But Captain Hargren, you say, you are not only the most famous Zarg mercenary in the known galaxy, but one of the sexiest bitches in the business, too. Surely your interpersonal relationships consist entirely of fucking the people you like and shooting the ones you don't. And to that, I say two things: yes I am, and learn some nuance. This universe is not one of absolutes, sweetmeats. Despite what video games tell you, life doesn't always cleanly divide into things to be fucked and things to be killed. There's varying shades of apathy between those two. Not that I'm apathetic about OP, mind you. Ophelia Walczak is a remarkable person who amazes me almost daily. About half the time in a good way. She's been doing that ever since the day she punched me in the face, nearly 20 years ago. So, to set the scene for that day, a younger and dumber Hargren was sitting in a bar called the Daughters of Catherlin, trying to get drunk and succeeding admirably, trying to get laid and not. It was a spacer bar, but a classy one. By which I mean they only allowed melee weapons inside, check your guns at the door, and if you got thrown out, they didn't loot your pockets first. It was owned and operated by 3 Felra littermates, daughters of the eponymous Catherlin, and each sister was her own flavor of sumptuous centaurite sex bomb. Elantha had a thing for dressing in bridal gowns all the time, while Elindra had this whole naughty intellectual look going, but I digress. Elaltra was running the bar that night, the tough gal of the 3 sisters. She was all leather and chains over taut green muscles and 4 of the most lickable legs I've ever seen. I'd been turning on the charm in an effort to win her over, or at least win her willingness to let me cop a feel. Not that I was having any luck, but I had nothing better to do. See, the Daughters of Catherlin is located on Tlabahan, the famous moon of the gas giant Sturback, and the reason it's famous is because the best commercial combat shipyard in this galactic arm is based there. I'm talking about Pajaharths and Company. You know, the guys who build the prototypes that every fleet admiral between the rim and core jerks off to. And they were building a little something for me at the time, a gorgeous piece of murderous spacefaring artistry now known as the assault cruiser Harlot's Blade. Maybe you've heard of it. Anyway, what I mean is that I was between ships. I'd sold off my old light frigate, the Mary Dirge, to finish paying for the Harlot's construction. That left me with just enough money for booze and hookers and maybe a little food and shelter to fill the time until the Harlot was ready for trials. So I had time on my hands, liquor on my breath, and pussy on my mind. And since I'm always one for one-stop shopping, I'd been hanging around Elaltra's bar and trying to work the old Hargren magic. Unfortunately, seductive charm hadn't worked. Neither had wit, bribery, or simply hiking up my skirt and hoping she'd stumble face first into my vagina. So, being a tactician of some renown, I changed my approach to impressing her. Since Elaltra didn't seem particularly GAGA over my reputation or experiences, I went with the one remaining impressive thing I possessed. My new ship. Seriously, sweetheart, I was telling her. It's gonna be the most badass ride this side of the core. And not just the weaponry, either. I've picked out this huge extra plush bed for the captain's suite. I'm talking enough room on it for a whole women's tagball team. You know, in case I decide to fuck one. The ceiling mirrors are imported Crathenian lava glass, with the frames inlaid with scenes of Kurang, the Zarg war goddess, fucking the 5 goddesses of destiny into submission. Your taste is matched only by your charisma, my hot Felra barmaid replied. The way she said it didn't sound exactly like a compliment. But, I had nothing better to do but keep at it. Battlefield experience teaches that sometimes, continually applied pressure can crack a defense entirely unexpectedly. And the engines. I burbled on. For big old Stelny Industries Mark 30s XS, with Arthok Golden Predator drive cores. The best and most powerful cutting edge. I heard a snort from off to my right. The kind of snort that says, no matter language or species, that the person who snorted believes they have just heard something which they find to be sincerely fucking stupid. Naturally, I could not let such a snort be uttered at me without challenge. Did I just hear an opinion? I asked, turning to look at whoever had just decided that their day wouldn't be complete without an ass-kicking. The person who had so unwisely snorted at me was a human. I'd seen her in the bar a few times before, but written her off as not my type. Too moody and morose. She was tall for a human, only a few inches shorter than me, but built so thick-boned and heavy-framed that she seemed almost squat. She was paler than most humans, with blondish hair bound back in a single long braid and cold, gloomy blue eyes. She was wearing a dirty and faded red and white sweatshirt that said, Chernobog Institute of Technology, and bore an image of an armored human soldier with wings riding some kind of quadruped, over faded stretch pants and some frankly hideous old work boots. Did you just give an unrequested opinion? I demanded, glaring at her. No, the human said, staring into her empty cup. I just gave you some unrequested derision. She turned to look at me, about as unsteady as I was. My unrequested opinion would be that the Arthawk Golden Predator is overhyped shit. Arthawk Consolidated spent more money marketing that piece of junk to gullible dumbass than they did developing it. They call it cutting edge, but it's really just a retread of their discredited Ultra Boost 2 with some sparkly add-ons and a slick ad campaign. Only a complete half-wit with zero engineering knowledge would spec that shit for a serious combat starship. Hey! I snarled. I'm the one who specified that. The human set her glass back on the bar and motioned for Elaltra to refill it. As I said, she chuckled. And just who the hells are you to be talking shit like that? I demanded. She gave that infuriating snort again. An engineer, and a damn good one. Unlike you, apparently. I drew myself up and tried to put on a proper military bearing. Not as easy as it sounds when the walls and floor keep wavering. I'll have you know that I'm the most in-demand private military contractor in this galactic arm. The woman eyed me up and down, and not in the way I like. Kind of impressive, if true, she sneered. But still not an engineering degree, furball. She turned back to her drink. Tell you what. Don't try to tell me that flashy, overhyped shit is quality machinery and I won't tell you how to break heads, or whatever the fuck it is you do. Looking back on it, it's obvious that the smart-mouthed bitch with the big hips and crappy wardrobe was actually right. No, I did not have much real engineering knowledge, and yes, I had chosen Golden Predator drive cores based mostly off of advertisements with catchy slogans and half-naked spokesbabes. But at that moment I was drunk and horny and frustrated, which is a recipe for shitty decision-making if there ever was one. It suddenly occurred to me that here would be a chance to impress Elaltra and her leather-bound tits of glory. I would demonstrate my prowess and defend my honor by putting this insolent engineer in her place. Elaltra would get so aroused by my awesomeness that her panties would break the sound barrier on their way to the floor. Hey, it could have happened. I don't care for your tone, human, I declared, all haughty and stiff like one of those asshole aristocrats I sometimes worked for. I don't care for your ignorance, Palm, so I guess we're even, the human shot right back. Palm is a nickname humans use for us Zargs. Supposedly, we resemble some animal from their homeworld called a Pomeranian, which I'm assuming is a fearsome and majestic apex predator. Whether or not Palm is a racial slur is entirely a matter of context. At any rate, I decided to take it as one. I slid off my stool, fists up and ready to go, only stumbling a little bit. The mouthy human did the same, the motion making her have to blink several times to focus her eyes on me. I was taller and had longer reach, but she was probably my equal in mass, though it was hard to tell with the unflattering baggy sweatshirt and all. We were also about equal in inebriation, so no advantages there. I heard a few interested mutters from the tables behind us as everyone's attention turned our way, then tense, utter quiet. That abrupt silence made the human and I both turn our eyes to Elaltra, who had drawn a pair of large-bore riot pistols and was pointing them at our heads. "We just replaced the furniture in here," she said, cold as hell's highest glaciers. "So if you must be idiots out back." She jerked her head toward the bar's delivery door and the alleyway beyond it. I like to think that it was a point of respect for my prowess as a combat professional that Elaltra tracked us with those guns until we were fully out that door. The alternative is that she didn't find me charming or attractive at all and would have welcomed an excuse to shoot me. And I just can't believe that. As we were going out the back door, a scar-faced gonher who'd been sitting against the far wall got up and went out the front. I didn't think much about it at the time. In 3V movies, alleys are always choked with trash and transients and overflowing waste containers. In fact, alleyways that are used regularly for business deliveries to places where the staff carries riot guns tend to be fairly well ordered. Clutter is minimized so that deliveries can go smoothly. Waste and trash get gathered regularly because running garbage through mass reclaimers for refab is way cheaper than fabbing new materials from scratch. And the transients and druggies are all either afraid of being shot or already have been. So the alley behind the Daughters of Catherine was fairly spacious and clean, apart from the blood and ichor stains on the pavement. "Right," I slurred as I squared off opposite the human. "I'm gonna kick your ass, then get some ass." The human scowled ferociously. "You're not getting mine." "No. I mean, right." I shook my head to clear some of the boozy fog out of it. "Yours gets kicked. But that's all. Elaltra's is the one that gets got." "Good," the human said, "because you are totally not my type." Well, that was just shocking to hear. What? Of course I am. Everybody wants a piece of this ass. I gave it a slap for emphasis. And everybody's probably had some of it. But not me. The human tried to give me a scornful down-the-nose look, but had to steady herself against the alley wall, spoiling the effect. I like my ladies to have certain special qualities. Like intelligence. Sophistication. Personalities that aren't utter shit. That's it. I warned her. I was just going to beat you up in a dispassionate, businesslike sort of way, but you just made it personal. Of course, the practical difference between those two was basically nil, but I wasn't telling her that. "Fine by me," she roared back, pushing up the sleeves on her ratty sweatshirt and raising her fists. Then she stopped and blinked woozily at me. "Only, remind me again how we got from talking about engine specs to this?" All this activity was making the booze hit me harder, too. Does it matter? We're out her and I'm pissed off now, so let's throw down. Fair enough, she replied. And then she punched me right on the fucking muzzle. I stumbled back, seeing stars. This bitch was faster than she had any right to be. I would later learn that her native world, Chernobog, is a high-gravity hellhole of blizzard-scoured steplands, semi-Arctic deserts, and the kinds of dense, gloomy forests they make horror movies about. Chernobog humans are built wide and strong and are far quicker than they look under more normal gravity. Their local language also seems to account for about half the consonants used in the known galaxy, and the cuisine is unnaturally heavy on sausages, though those points aren't really relevant to this story. Chernobog women tend to be pretty buxom, too. That's not relevant either, but who doesn't like bringing tits into a conversation? Anyhow, the human punched me in the face. She tried to follow up with her other hand, but I dodged that one through a combination of alcohol-induced poor aim on her part and my own outstanding skill at hand-to-hand combat. We'll call it half and half. I aimed a kick at her knee that missed and hit her shin instead. But I wear Zarg heavy cavalry jackboots for two reasons. First and foremost is that they make my legs look absolutely tasty. Second is that they have hard, pointy toes that concentrate the force of any kick. She gave a yelp and staggered back. High-grav bone structure or not, she felt that one. I could taste blood in my mouth, but you can't worry about things like that. I moved in on the human, sending a jab at her head that she blocked with a forearm and slugging her in the gut with the other. It felt like hitting a pillow strapped to a tree trunk. A little soft give, then a whole lot of no give at all. We traded sloppy blows for a moment, neither of us doing as much damage as you'd think due to our inebriation. I tagged her a couple of good shots to the jaw and she landed a hard one to my belly right on my lower left teat that hurt like a mad bastard. I tried to open the range between us so I could use my longer reach, but she wasn't having that. With a cry of, Duma Huzarianska, she launched herself onto me and we both immediately hit the ground. I got the worst of that, being on bottom. And while I normally enjoy having an aggressive woman put me on my back and straddle me, not so much when we're on pavement and she's using my ears as handles to bang my head against the ground. I went for the eye gouge, a favorite move of mine at any time. I didn't get my thumbs in her eyes, but it made her let go of my ears and grab my wrists instead. Then, when she leaned back to get her face away, I hoisted a knee up into her spine. She didn't like that much, so I did it again, harder, and she rolled off me with a groan and scrambled away. We ended up propped against opposite walls, both of us panting for breath and trying not to puke. I was poking my tongue at the split in my lip and trying to tell if I had any teeth loose on that side. It felt like I probably had a big laceration on the back of my head. But fuck that. It wouldn't impact my looks like a busted lip would. The human was wiggling her jaw and rubbing at her back. Ready to give up? I asked. Always give a strong enemy a chance to surrender. That's a prime rule of the mercenary business. Fighting to the bitter bloody end makes for exciting 3v, but can really chew into the profit margin. Fuck you, the human gasped. I thought about that. Well, okay, if that's your surrender condition. But you have to be on bottom and I'm not sure I'm up to much tongue stuff right now. What? The human shook her head. No, you oversexed imbecile. I mean fuck yourself, not me. A Chernobogska never gives up in matters of honor. Brak Kapitulachi. She started to straighten up, winced, and thought better of it. This fight will go on. Just, in a minute or two. She shuddered and horked something semi-digested onto the pavement. I was trying to think up a witty response when my drink-dulled instincts finally got around to warning me that the human and I were no longer alone in the alley. That realization hit me a half-heartbeat before a voice announced its presence. Actually, this fight is over. The voice was kind of squeaky and toothless sounding and I knew what I was going to see even as I turned my head to look. It was our old drinking buddy, the Gonhir who'd slipped out the front door. Like every Gonhir, he was a short, spindly-limbed biped with 3 stalked eyes above a face that looked like an unwashed asshole. Now some Gonhir are pretty cool people. And I used to know this one Gonhir chick in the Deritar system who could do mind-blowing things with that sphincter mouth of theirs. But most Gonhir are inclined to being aggressive, temperamental dicks as their default attitude. This particular Gonhir was uglier than most and the 3 buddies he'd brought along with him were not much improvement. The pulse pistols they were pointing at me weren't all that pretty either. The sketchiest looking Gonhir stepped forward, looking smug and punchable. Well. If it isn't Hargren of Stormhill. The infamous captain of the Merry Dirge. This one had a hint of a lisp to go along with the Gonhir accent and had a green sash knotted around his waist. He turned his attention to the human momentarily. We are grateful to you, human. We have been waiting for this one to lower her guard enough for us to take, and now you've beaten her halfway into submission for us. You're welcome, snarled the human. As repayment, how about you fuck off and let us finish? Sorry, no. We've been waiting a long time for this. The sashed Gonhir took a step closer, gun still on me. Do you remember me, Hargren? Can't say I do, I answered truthfully. You killed a great many comrades of mine. I kill a lot of people. You'll have to be more specific. I actually wasn't even trying to remember who this tool and his cronies were. The important thing was to keep him talking. Because the longer he talked, the more likely he would screw up. It was already obvious that these assholes weren't professionals. If they were, they'd have just shot me the moment they confirmed my identity. No, these were amateurs. Amateurs who wanted to feel like big boss badasses. And amateurs can always be counted on to do something stupid. That was the big difference between us. The booze had made me pretty fucking stupid myself, but as a professional, I didn't need my brains in a situation like this. I had doctrine, training, and muscle memory to do my thinking for me. Amateurs have to think and decide every step, with the first bad decision they make leading to another and another in cascading failure. It's just a matter of forcing them to make those decisions, or giving them enough time to happen naturally. It was in the Throgabanda system, Green Sash hissed. Oh man, I killed shitloads of people there. That doesn't really help. That just made the Gonhair angrier, which was good, because the only thing more likely to fuck up than an amateur is an emotionally invested amateur. By getting him focused on our conversation and what he was going to say next, he was not focusing on what I was doing. Namely, on me stealthily palming the combat knife I had tucked into a sheath on my lower back. I had 2 more on me in other places, but they'd be more obvious if I went for them. I glanced over at the human, who seemed less than thrilled with these new arrivals. Which was fine by me. Yeah, we'd been beating the shit out of each other, but we weren't serious about it. At least, I wasn't. I mean, I hadn't tried to stab her or anything. And she hadn't pulled whatever that Durala-handled thing was she had sticking out the top of her right boot. I was assuming it was a weapon, because why would somebody carry something that wasn't one? Anyway, it looked like she was not on the enemy team, which moved the calculus slightly in my favor. You and your crew raided our compound on one of the lesser moons, the Gonhair prodded. You came in, guns blazing, and butchered my brothers in arms without warning. His 3 followers were starting to look kind of antsy. The scar-faced one who'd been in the bar seemed the most alert and competent, so I decided to knife him first when the time came. Yeah, I replied. We did like 6 or 7 of those smash and grab raids in Throgabanda. Which one were you? Unseen, I flipped the knife over in my hand, by some miracle not dropping it, and took it by the tip. As soon as I could get these jerks distracted enough to point their eyes and or weapons at something else for a moment, I'd throw it at Scarface and then charge to get amongst the Gonhair, who were unwisely clustered together. It would be hard to fire pulsars in such a grouping without hitting each other, so either they'd hesitate and I'd take them down, they'd fire anyway and hit each other, or, just possibly, they'd actually manage to kill me. Death was always a possibility, and one I'd long ago come to terms with. Because of a particular enemy I once had, I'd also taken a little precaution against that eventuality. It wouldn't save my life, but it meant that unless my killer took me out from over 300 yards away, they, along with everybody else within that radius of my fresh corpse, were going to have a very, very bad day. Also a very brief one. But that's a story Hargren will have to tell you sweetmeats another time. Suffice it to say that when I eventually do get killed, the people near my body better be some sprinting motherfuckers, or have a blast bunker in easy reach. It was on Mabrathak, the Gonhair snarled. Or, as near a noise to a snarl as a sphincter mouth can make. The Stone Sea Mountains. He got even madder when I just shrugged. Damn you. How dare you forget your infamous massacre of my people? I just shook my head. Sorry, but all my massacres start to run together after a while. Then it hit me and I perked up and swiveled my ears attentively toward him, because I'm all polite and shit. Oh, wait. You're talking about that terrorist group we wiped out. The Gonhair supremacists. The green flag assholes, right? They were courageous freedom fighters, Green Sash shrieked. The Throgabanda Gonhair Liberation Front is dedicated to the empowerment of the Gonhair minority of the Throgabanda system. By any means necessary. Yeah, he was getting angry enough that the stupid misstep had to be coming soon. I laughed at him. Because it was funny, but mostly because the only thing a fanatic hates more than his sworn enemy is being laughed at. Dude, your main tactic was bombing Xeno day cares and maternity clinics. You're fucking terrorists. Those were the necessary means. The non-Gonher pollute our pristine new homeland with their damn spawn. He was really shaking now. Scarface nudged him for attention. Sir. We should kill her right now. Shoot her and get out of here. No. Nothing so merciful. Not now. He was trying to sound all cold and terrifying now, but I wasn't feeling it. An example must be made. This flippant bitch needs to suffer for what she did to our brothers. Her death agonies will be a warning to all that the TGLF is not dead and can still punish its enemies. There. That right there is another big reason why amateurs suck so much in the organized violence business. They take things way too personally and end up trading operational momentum for emotional validation, which on the battlefield is like trading your virginity for a promise of free candy. What you've traded away you will never, ever get back, and what you're trading for you will probably never receive. I unobtrusively flexed my knees and secured my throwing grip on the knife. But Sir, Scarface protested. Yeah, he was the least incompetent of these assholes. He would definitely have to die first. As soon as his attention shifted focus to arguing with his boss. Before that could happen, the human stood up and cleared her throat. Excuse me, she grunted, not sounding particularly unsettled by the guns being waved around. Points for nerviness, I suppose. If I'm hearing this right, your business is with Miss Fluffytwat over there and not me, correct? If that's the case, can I go? I mean, I don't like this vapid palm slut either. If you guys want to kill her, I am absolutely okay with that. Hey! I objected. Being called vapid was just hurtful. The green-sashed guy glanced over at her, a little testily. You are Hermin filth, he snapped, using a popular slur for humans. But then he softened a little. But you have shed the blood of our foe and aided our organization's righteous vengeance. He jerked a thumb toward the street behind him. Be gone. Now, lest you think it was a completely unreasonable fuck-up for them to let a witness just walk away like that, be aware that it really wasn't. Tlabahan's only real law enforcement was the corporate security forces, and those only kept order in the company zones. Outside that, businesses and residential blocks hired their own private guards and watchmen. She could run out and tell whoever she wanted to that these guys had murdered me. Since I wasn't paying for any of those guards or watchmen, the only people who might bother pursuing the matter were my friends. Not that she seemed too inclined to tell anyone, anyway. It was almost as if she didn't like me very much. Strange, but true. Thanks, guys, the human said, moving toward the alley exit with a lurch. She paused and glanced over her shoulder at me. Have fun getting murdered, bitch. Ooh, that was a pretty good line. All coldly nonchalant and everything. Green sash guy could have learned something from her. I might even steal that line for later use myself. Assuming I, didn't actually get murdered here. As the human wobbled down the alley, it was obvious the Gonher who were cordoning it off would have to step aside to let her pass. That moment of distraction and divided attention would be my opening. I tried to keep any bloodthirsty grin of anticipation off my face, which was difficult because, being totally honest here, I live for this kind of shit. I mean, yeah, I work hard in the mercenary business as a way to get pussy. And money. And then I use the money to get more pussy. All true. But there are other ways I could earn enough cash to drown myself in high-class vag, if I really wanted to. I could be a stockbroker, or a real estate mogul, or some shit like that. Only, those professions don't offer many chances for you to take the ultimate gamble. To bet your very existence, literally everything you are or ever will be, versus another's own existence on the simple question of, which one of us is better at not dying. Few other feelings can match the rush, the thrill of accepting the ultimate wager and coming out the winner. Once you've tasted that, playing for any other stake just feels like chump change. Anyway, the opportunity came, just as I expected. The Gonhyr shifted to let the human get past. For just a moment, a second or two, their attention was on things other than me, on the human, on their own positions, on where to put their feet. And in that moment, I flicked my hand out in a smooth and practiced underhand throw. My blade flashed across the gap between me and the scar-faced Gonhyr, who was fully refocusing on me just as the point struck home. The knife caught him in the same arm that held his gun, the monomolecular edge slicing straight through his sleeve as the blade buried itself in his bicep. He jerked at the impact and the pulse pistol lost its point of aim. Severed tendon, probably. A beautiful piece of work on my part, marred only slightly by the fact that I'd been aiming for his face. No time to think about that. I was already up and moving while the knife was still in flight. I snatched my other two knives off my hips and sprang forward, to get in among my foes and lay waste to them in their moment of fatal inattention. Or so I intended. What actually happened was that I made 2 steps forward, lost my balance in a drunken stumble, and hit the pavement 8 feet shy of my goal. Well, shit. I looked up to see those gun muzzles tracking my way. They had me. Had me dead to rights. Though I was already trying to scramble back to my feet, to get up and moving and back in the fight, I could see that it wasn't going to happen. Barring some miracle, some divine intervention, I'd be hammered with blast pulses before I could even stand up again. Even a bunch of stupid Gonhyr terrorist amateurs couldn't miss me at that range. But I didn't just meekly accept my fate either, because Hargren of Stormhill doesn't do meek anything, and because you just never know. Anything can happen in this crazy universe. Even miracles. Maybe even divine intervention. Or even human intervention. As the 3 unwounded Gonhyr brought their weapons to bear, the human shoved the one closest to her into the other 2. All 3 Gonhyr stumbled together in a confused scrum for a moment, and in the 2 seconds or so it took to sort themselves out, I was up and on them and slashing. The monomole-edged knives sliced through clothes and flesh like it wasn't even there. I wasn't stabbing yet because I didn't want to get a blade stuck in a body and have to lose time and momentum getting it out. Stabs are for finishing. I needed to disable multiple opponents quickly, so I just concentrated on slashing everything within reach, cutting through muscles and spilling blood and organs. I got the leader with a long cut across the belly that left his guts falling out over his formerly green sash. A return stroke across the forearm sent his pulse pistol tumbling from a hand that could no longer grip. Meanwhile, my other knife took 2 of the 3 eye stalks off the top of his nearest buddy's head. Still, that guy had his chance to shoot me and could have done it if he wasn't so busy screaming and bleeding instead. Fucking amateurs, I tell you. In my peripheral vision, I could see the scar-faced Gonhyr switching his pistol over to his good hand. Before he could draw a bead, the human slugged him in the face, causing him to drop the gun as the punch threw him back into the alley wall. That left 1 unwounded Gonhyr. He was on the other side of the eviscerated green sash guy, between the human and me. His attention wavered between us, undecided which one he should be trying to shoot. Amateur shit again. The human was closer, but I was hacking apart his buddies. But he couldn't fire a burst at me without his friends getting caught in it. So he dithered. Only for a moment, but that's all it takes. Before he could act one way or the other, the human rendered his choice forever moot by whacking him across the back of the head with whatever that Durla-handled thing was that she'd just snatched out of her boot. The Gonhyr didn't fall, but his mouth kind of went slack and his body gave an all-over, loose-limbed shudder. Then the human drew back to hit him again and I could make out what her weapon was, a heavy-duty adjustable wrench, nearly 1.5 feet long. Engineers and their toys, man. What can you do? She gave the Gonhyr another smack that splattered blood and brains across the alley. As that one dropped, I gave the blinded screamer a finishing stab through the neck. My knife bound up in cartilage or vertebrae or something, so I left it there so I could move on the next threat. Since the leader was sinking to his knees while trying to stuff his intestines back in, I just kicked his pistol away and turned toward Scarface. A breath slower than me, the human did the same. Before either of us could move against him, he took off down the alley, pinkish gonhair blood dribbling along as my knife fell out of his arm. Instead of trying to get past us, he was going the other way, toward the bar's back door. And say what you would about the little anus-faced bastard, he was quick on his feet. I don't think I could have caught him even if I'd been sober. I threw my knife instead, and it absolutely would have caught him if I'd been sober. But I wasn't, so it bounced off the wall about 3 feet above his head. Then he was through the door and safely inside the Daughters of Catherine. Shit! I snarled. I hate it when people survive my murderous rampages. The crash of furniture being knocked over carried through the bar's still open door. On the heels of that came a Felra-accented voice calling out, "Those were new tables, you gonhair fuck." And then the unmistakable thunder of a riot pistol going off in an enclosed space. Heh. I hate it rather less when people survive my murderous rampages, only to die anyway shortly afterwards. Irony like that gives me the giggles. Speaking of short-term survivors, there was still the green sash guy to finish up with. He was on his knees, functional hand clutching at the guts that were slithering out through his new belly opening. He looked up at me as I knelt in front of him. Surrender, he gasped out. Not accepted, I replied with a smile. Then I grabbed his head with both hands and gave it a sudden sharp twist to the left. The delightful crackle of snapping vertebrae was my reward, and I let the now limp body thump to the pavement. One more gambler who'd bet everything he had on being better than Hargren of Stormhill at not getting killed. The fact that I had long since lost count of how many of those there had been would have bothered a better person. Fortunately for me, I'm not a better person. I found the human staring at me, not saying anything, so I did the same right back to her. Her pale face was a little flushed with exertion, but otherwise just as dour and morose as before. I wasn't sure at the time if it was because she had resting bitch face or resting bitch personality. I've since learned that the answer to that is yes. She didn't say anything. I didn't say anything. From inside the bar, somebody loudly asked what color gonhair brains were, because they thought some had gotten in their drink. My silence appeared to incense the human for some reason. She started to fidget, then jammed the blood-clotted wrench back down her boot, glaring at me like she was my landlord or something. Well, she demanded. Well, what? That made her glare harder. Aren't you going to thank me for saving you? That was a question I totally did not expect. I'm pretty sure I looked at her like she'd just asked for my grandmother's toe jam on a toasted roll. What? Why would I do that? Because I saved you. I just shook my head. No. You said you were fine with them killing me. She waved that aside as unimportant. Yes. But I didn't let them, did I? I mean, you are annoying as fuck, but when those guys admitted to blowing up little babies, I decided, to hell with them. So I chose to take them down and save your dumbass in the bargain. That's bullshit and you know it, I snapped back. I had everything well in hand the whole time. A slight exaggeration, perhaps. But not nearly as much truth mutilating as she was doing. The human barked a scornful laugh. Kurwa. You fell on your stupid palm face right in front of their guns. If I hadn't intervened. Against this trash. I demanded, prodding a gonhair corpse with my boot. There was blood everywhere, but I wasn't worried about getting it on my nice boots. Everything in my wardrobe is blood and body fluid repellent and has been ever since I was a teenager. Let's just say that I started at a young age. I wouldn't have needed your help on my worst day, bitch. Her Arctic Sea eyes narrowed dangerously and she raised her clenched fists. Oh really? You want to fight about it, then? Fight some more, I mean. I thought about that, then made a non-committal half-shrug. Meh. Not really. I kicked the dead gonhair a little harder, making a nasty semi-liquid squelch. These guys kind of ruined the mood. It was true. Ass-kicking was one thing, bloody slaughter was entirely another. It was kind of the same way eating a big, serious steak ruins your desire for fun and sugary candy for a little while. You just get full and the contrast of flavors so close together is too much to deal with. Still, one mood leads to another, and if this chick was wanting some gratitude. How about sex, instead? I asked her, giving my ass a little wiggle. You up for that? Her face twisted a little. Maybe. But not with you. We glared at each other some more. You are a mouthy, arrogant, I started. The human cut me off. Opie. I assumed that was another bit of her native lingo, since she seemed to like peppering her galactophonic with it. What the hell's an opie? I growled, just about at my limit with her. I am. It's my name. Opie Walksack. Well, you are a mouthy, arrogant frump, Opie Walksack. The human, Opie, drew herself up to her full height. Still shorter than me, but as she sucked in an angry breath, she seemed to swell up like a Valian swamphopper preening for a mate, only ticked off and badly dressed. Perhaps I am. But I'm the mouthy, arrogant, frumpy engineer who just saved your ass, while you are a conceited, headstrong, oversexed. Hargren, I interrupted. Hargren of Stormhill. Then you are a conceited, headstrong, oversexed thug, Hargren of Stormhill. I considered that statement and could find surprisingly little to dispute in it. Yeah, pretty much, I told her. For the very first time, her expression changed to something that wasn't absolutely pissy. It wasn't a smile by any means, but the gloom in that broad, pale face lightened just a little bit. You also know nothing of Starship engine technology, she added. I sighed. I'll have to grant you that one, too. She still wasn't smiling. But if a person could be said to have a sly, almost cheeky bitch scowl, then that was what was on Opie's face right then as she said, and I totally saved you from those gone here. I raised a cautionary finger at her. Don't push your luck, sugartits. Whatever. She motioned toward the Daughters of Catherlan's delivery door, from which the faint, melodious sound of non-stop Felra profanity could be heard. Want to go back inside? I shook my head. We better not. Eloutra's in a mood now. She's likely to blame us for having to shoot that guy. We'll either get shot ourselves, or end up mopping. Opie didn't look like she fancied those possibilities any more than I did. But an alternative occurred to me. One I knew she would go for. And after all, whether I'd really needed her or not, she'd gotten involved when she didn't have to, and that was worth something. How about we go to this place I know 2 blocks over where the drinks are cheap and the Dahu waitress will do freaky things to you under the table for a tenner. We can finish getting plastered and you can lecture me all about how I need to change my ship's engine specs. I don't do engineering consultations for free, she huffed. I'm buying. That took the huffiness right back out of her. She gestured toward the street like we were high society and she was asking me out onto a dance floor. Oh. Well then, lead the way, you fuzzy slut bag. Right this way, you unrelenting shrew bitch, I politely replied as we staggered side by side out of the corpse-strewn alley. And that, as they say, was the beginning of a beautiful friendship.